Hi everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Lethabo Motsoaledi. First of all, welcome Lethabo. As you may have heard, she has accomplished quite a few things in her young career. She is the co-founder and CEO of 3D Power, a design and consulting startup. And the company's mission is to bridge the gap between the ideas and products through applying user-centered design and using various Industry 4.0 techniques. I hope to learn later about what that actually is. In 2017, she was awarded the Mail and Guardian prestigious 200 Young South Africans Award. Wow, she's an Alan Gray Orbis Foundation Fellow. She's a former Mandela Rhodes Scholar of 2016. Yay. She's achieved so much. She was included in the list of South Africa's 50 most inspiring women in technology by the Kingdom of Netherlands Inspiring 50 SA. In 2015, she completed a bachelor's degree in geomatics, top of her class. And for this, then she got medals, which culminated in her being awarded the SAGE Award for Best Surveying Student from all the universities in South Africa. Amongst the work that she's done with 3D, the 3D powered Hello Baby 3D prints and the Hourglass project. And she believes that continuous dialogue and open collaboration among individuals across various industries and cultural backgrounds are the key ingredients to building successful, forward-moving society. It is our pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to hearing more about you.
Hi, guys. Okay. I'm actually really, really nervous. And part of the reason was because, as you've heard, I was sitting in your seats like 12 months ago, or maybe even less. I don't know if it was exactly the same time. So I'm like a little bit nervous to say, like, what do I have to say over the past 12 months that will really be different? But it's more of my story and my journey, what I've experienced since I've been on this path. And wow, I'm gonna like try and unleash it all without overwhelming. But don't do that. So over the past. Last night I was actually really thinking, what can I say that will resonate and be really important? And I thought I'm really in no position to be teaching lessons because I'm still learning myself. And it's more about the journey that I've experienced and perhaps looking at, the path and the struggles of being an entrepreneurship. That's really what I wanted to do. One thing that before I start, one thing I wanted to share was throughout my varsity career, listening to entrepreneurs that have like succeeded or made it, one thing that I found missing, and now I realize why, is because one thing I found missing is really the like turbulence of the journey that people tend to forget, because once you reach some sort of level of success or you achieve in that little or that very turbulent task, you tend to forget about that, like the darkness of the journey. So when you share it, you forget that part, because that's why you're going to go do it again, because you forgot how really tough whatever it was. So I hope I'm still there to be able to share a little bit of what it's like. I studied engineering, and why I studied engineering was because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, except I didn't know what problem I wanted to solve. So I was like, I'm going to do engineering and I'm going to figure it out from there. And when I started, I thought I'd be into property. So I'd be trying to figure out how to create greener cities and whatever. And that changed because when I got into varsity, it was no longer the problem I wanted to solve. And then what then happened is right after graduating, I almost got tempted to go into consulting. I'd actually lined up various consulting interviews, and then I made it into one consulting firm. I'd already signed the contract, and a month before, I'm like, I really don't want to do this. But one thing I was like, I really have to be an entrepreneur, but I've got no problem to solve. Like, what am I going to go out and do? And then eventually I canceled my contract a month before I was meant to start working, and that coincided with the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship. So I was like, yes, this is a sign. Go do your master's and continue to find this problem that you're going to try solve. And while I was there, sort of, like you say, once you decide you're going to do something, the universe really does conspire to help you figure out your path and sort of helps you with things that you need to do. So as of 2 years and a week ago, I was the co-founder and CEO of 3D Power. That was until last week. 3D Power is a product development and design consultancy. It came up with a lot of ideas. So we basically, the first thing that fell on our laps was figuring out the algorithm to convert a 3D print into an ultrasound. So once we did that, we're like, yay, let's go to market. So we went to market with that. And then the next thing was helping, and the idea itself iterated a lot, but helping companies figure out how to track and encourage employee volunteerism programs. And that was done through a design piece called the Hourglass. And we iterated and worked a lot with companies to try figure out what can we do to sell you this Hourglass that will make sure that you become known as a socially responsible company, but also encourage it within your organization. So then we did that, and then it was sort of a journey of like going from idea to product, but never quite figuring out what exactly, really gels us together. And last week, it literally came as like a light bulb. Why I'm saying last week is because it literally was a week ago that we completely changed our name, our brand, and what our offering is to the market. And within 2 days of doing that, we've landed 6 big clients. And yeah, I'm quite excited. Yeah, because we're finally post-revenue. And what I wanted to say is that the past 2 years were not, it wasn't like a useless 2 years. It was 2 years figuring out what the problem is, what we're good at, what we're not, what the market looks like. So I wouldn't say that, why I say we changed from 3D Power is because it was the right time to change our brand, who we are, but also everybody thought we were doing 3D printing. So we had to change our name. And also the value of being small and being a startup is that you're literally so agile. You can switch and change, see what the market says, and say, this is what we're going to do. So now I'm the co-founder of Motsoaledi and West. We are we are in the business of disruptive intelligence, and what we do is we help companies fast-track innovation. So by that is that through working with different corporates and going from idea to product various times, we learned that there's a serious challenge when it comes to innovation in big organizations. It's a slow-moving thing. Any idea can take anything from like 4 months to like 3 years to take to market, where really it takes a startup like a few months to do, or a few days to do at that. And we also then found that other companies spend so much time, or smaller businesses spend so much time working on their or working in their business, that they don't have time to actually answer the question, if I were to fail to exist within the next year, what would be the reason? And that's our role. We come in saying, you spend so much time working on your business that you're not thinking about what could disrupt me. The taxi industry didn't have time to think about Uber. They had time to actually put bread on the table and work the everyday job. So that's what we do. And I found that that's quite exciting, because I get to go from idea to product almost every day to say, this is a good idea, let me test it and let's take it to market, either for ourselves or for different companies. And yeah, and most importantly, before I forget, more than a year ago, just a year ago, I was sitting here thinking, what exactly could I do to make sure I get one of those limited edition books? And I'm hoping, that's all. That's all. I was sitting there with Colin, I'm like, we have to do something. But yeah, to say that I'm close enough, I hope I'm close enough. But yeah, so essentially after we started, we now went from idea to product so many times. We're now offering that service to other businesses. And it really became a story of, this is how I'm going to share and culminate how we came to the past week and actually landing 6 clients. By that I mean it's like random. It's like ABSA, it's FNB, it's like Allen Gray as well. They all sound like financial services. But it's because we ended up learning how to sell something so well. Like, you guys need innovation, and this is why. We're young, we're fresh, and I know you're not thinking about what's going to disrupt you. We're going to spend our time looking at the periphery, looking around to see what it is that you need to do to remain relevant and to future-proof yourself. So that's what we do. But to get to this journey has been a lot of challenges, which I'd like to share, because that's essentially what it took to get us off the ground. And the first thing was, 2.5 years ago, thinking about being an entrepreneur, the biggest thing that I want to share now, while I still remember, is the search for funding is not the thing that you should be doing. We wasted our time looking for, funding. This is our idea. We want to take it to market. We need like R500,000. We need R1 million. So for each, idea, you needed money. But it was sort of like a false teaching, because I don't know where we got that idea from, because it only took us, 2.5 years to realize when you've got a great idea, you don't need funding. You need your customers to validate it. So you need your market. So the first thing that I would say we should have done was actually go straight to the market with your idea. That comes with another thing, and probably a lot of us are sitting here with really great ideas, and our challenge is, it's not ready, it's going to get stolen, I'm not ready to do this. But you don't know, or we didn't know it was a great idea until you had it criticized, until you had it judged, until you had it got feedback from your actual market, because then you get to refine, and then you get to actually fail, and you fail early, and then you realize, oh, actually, I thought I needed to create a driverless car. So I'm not bashing those, I think those are good ideas. But you thought you needed to create a driverless car, but talking to your market, you realized actually what needed to happen was to actually just build a robot that fits into the everyday car. Do you know what I mean? So this is what you do and it doesn't cost you anything. So that's why the idea of entrepreneurship being something that you need to wait for funding. The funding will arrive when you are actually ready for the funding. But what you need to do is step out of our comfort zone and actually start testing. What is it that we really have? Is it of value? Is this something that my society really needs? And honestly, if it really is, it's like almost trying to sell, almost trying to open up a restaurant. You need to first validate if people like your food, if your offering is really necessary, and you don't need any funds to do that. And that's something that we learned, that on the contrary, actually go to the market first. And another lesson, or something that we experienced, was the fear that your idea will get stolen. So going from idea to product a lot, we spent a lot on our stuff, and we're like, no, we can't. We have to wait for the perfect time. There's never a perfect time. And really, what we learned is that it's all about execution. It's all about what you've learned behind what it is that you've done. So you go, then you're like, here's my idea, and this is what I want to do, and keep testing and refining. So I'm going to move quickly because I'm running out of ideas. And another thing is, a concept we learned recently is Elon Weeks. I don't know how many people listen to Elon Musk and listen to what he says, but his idea that you need to work 100-hour week. The average person is working 40 hours a week. Now, when you told me that 2 years ago, I was going to be like, no, I'm not going to work 100-hour week. That's ridiculous. But what it takes someone to do, what it will take you to do in 4 months will take someone else to do in a year. So the value of actually just putting all in time and effort into something that you're very, very passionate about will help you fail fast, and actually iterate until you find that thing. So even to say that we're in the business of disruptive intelligence, I know that we're still searching for a scalable, replicable business model, and we'll only get there if we keep on working really hard until we find that spark that's eventually going to help it expand or scale to the rest of the world. And another thing that I wanted to share, just as scholars, because I'm still a scholar, yes, is that we shouldn't doubt or doubt the value of our achievements or awards. Even being here, I remember wondering, like, what makes me cut out to be a Mandela Rhodes Scholar? I mean, it's such a big thing, or it's not such a big thing because I got it, so it mustn't be it is actually a very big deal. You don't understand, or people will tell you, and I think we should have it from now, that the number or the amount of things that you've achieved actually are so inspiring, and that in itself is reason to go on this journey and actually to execute. The biggest challenge was overcoming what you think or what I thought was my worth. What is it that I have to offer, and why is it super important? What do I have to give? And people were like, but you're Mandela Rhodes, and you're Alan Gray, and you're Inspiring 50, and you're this, and you don't really, just that means you've overcome the first part of the step. And whatever it is that you have to share, people will be willing to listen. So don't doubt what you've achieved and what you're capable of achieving. And the last thing is being happy with rejection. It is the weirdest thing. Every single day I wake up ready to try something that I almost for a fact know I'll be rejected for. And doing that actually helps you, it helped me build like a thicker skin. Right now, in the beginning, I'd get rejected and it was like tears for like a week. And now it's like a rejection, and within like 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, who's next? Let me try something else. And that thick skin, I really, in the context of where we are, where there's little bit of funding, people tend to be apathetic to really great ideas. You'll come with a very good idea, and you almost find like people aren't willing to listen. You know, there's no funding. There's so many challenges. There's nothing as valuable as having that thick skin. And it doesn't just come. It comes by actually actively putting ourselves there, ready to fail. If I put myself out there and people are going to actually shut me down, no, that's a bad idea. Developing that thick skin is honestly the most valuable thing ever, because I'm ready to now try it again, dust myself off, and find something else. And yeah, so that's it. I'm ready to engage with everyone else. Actually, on the product side, I realized I didn't speak much about that, but it was more about getting a feel for who I am and what I do. Yeah.
Thank you, Lethabo.
So obviously, the kind of businesses that you guys do interact with the international kind of framework. So the general literature is that protectionism is essential in development of states. You know, if you look at the UK, the US, like everyone, and it happens that right now there's this whole notion of free trade. So as people who are African entrepreneurs, do you think that Africa really has a chance to develop without protectionism? And would you thrive better? Would your business thrive better if we're more protectionist?
And sorry, Walter, I didn't ask you to do this at the beginning, but to everybody, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and where you're from.
Sorry, my name is Walter Mandela. I'm doing an LLM, a Master of Laws, International Law at UCT.
And you're from?
I'm from Uganda.
Thank you. I think Emmanuel, you had your hand up, eh?
Okay, hello. Yeah, my name is Emmanuel. I'm from Nigeria. I'm doing a master's in electrical electronics at UCT. My question is based on the startup thing you guys have been talking about. It seems you guys made a very rigid decision. Like, okay, I'm very bad with names, but I'm looking at you, yeah. Yeah, you did say that you had an offer and you cancelled the offer to pursue to solve a problem. You were working in consulting. I've tried to get into McKinsey, I don't know. I just get caught out at the final stage most times. Okay, yeah. And you were there at the peak of it and you left for something you loved. And he also said, MacBain also said so many things yesterday, like, okay, he succeeded, like feeling forward and all. So my question is, okay, how do you articulate that point where you know that, okay, how do you make that decision that I'm just going to quit. Like, it's scary for me. That's the problem. That's where I am currently, because there's this thing of pursuing this because you know it is secure and doing that which you don't know where it's going to end. So it's kind of scary for me. And I think it's more of a personal thing now. And the other thing I want to ask is, okay, yeah, it is the same question. Yeah, okay, it is the same question. When is failure fatal? Meaning that this fail, like you keep failing, because you keep saying fail forward, but you keep failing at the same thing. When do you get to that point where you know, I should try something else? This is just not working. Or do you just keep doing it and saying I'm persistent?
Good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Daniel. Actually, I have a question for Lethabo. Okay, I'm from Nigeria, and I'm studying a master's in economic development at the University of Cape Town. So my question is to Lethabo is, what do you think South Africa can do to promote small businesses? Because a few weeks ago, I went to buy 2 shirts. I wanted to buy more stuff, but I ended up buying only 2 shirts. And yeah, because it cost me 1,400 rands. And that's insignificant for the big guys, right? But for someone that is coming up like me, it's actually a lot. So I engaged the young man and I asked him, why are they so expensive? So he told me that it's actually very difficult, as a small business, to do business in South Africa because you can't compete, right? Because the big businesses already have the licenses, and if you're going to bring in the goods, you have to move it through maybe Mozambique and all that. And if you are caught, you have to pay fines and all that. So at the end of the day, the cost balloons, and it means that you can't compete. And you've said now, my professor told me also that small businesses are more situated, are more positioned, to innovate, much more than big businesses. So what do you think we can do to promote, to balance the scale between small and big businesses in South Africa?
Thank you, Daniel. And we're going to just hand over to Claude and then get a response to these questions, and then we'll move to the side.
My name is Claude. I'm from Togo. You need to repeat it again. I'm from Togo. I'm doing my master's in renewable energy at Stellenbosch University. Now, my question is about rejection, like being happy with rejection. So what I would like to know is, in a business situation, how do you guys know when to persist? Because you can't just be happy with rejection and move on. Sometimes you might need to persist. So what's your principle on, like, when to persist and get it through in case the client, let's assume a client or the person who you are presenting the idea to is a bit resilient to it, but it's good for him. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's just try and help the panelists. There's a question about protectionism, about when failure is fatal and how to push through and make those decisions. A question about small businesses, and then also related, like, when do you stop instead of just pushing forward? And then we'll move to the backside, the side at the back.
Okay, I'm gonna rush through what I got very quickly, but from Walter, not from a law perspective. I think that what we started practicing is obviously something that needs to be at the end of scale or the end of the scale once you've created your product. But what I was speaking about is user-centered design. So the idea of that you're not creating innovations or building things for people, you're building with people, and that first of all, increases your speed to market. If you're designing a water sanitation system for a rural area, you shouldn't be sitting behind, like, in your office in Sandton or something. You should be in that rural area building with people. And that's what I mean to say, like, the idea is not much, but building with people. And once you have a final prototype, once you have a final product, then you go out and see, is this patentable? Is this something I can protect? And then you go out about those means of doing that. But before you've even gone out to test whether this works, you don't go getting expensive patents and doing all of that, because that's going to be, you're creating a barrier to entry on something that doesn't need. If you can test it, if you can build it, a low-cost prototype, then you do that with the community or whoever your customer is. And then once you've got something that works, you go out looking to see if you can get protected. I don't know if I'm answering that correctly, but I'll leave it to everyone else on that. And then Emmanuel, you spoke about how to articulate or decide that if you want to do something. And one thing that I wanted to share is this interesting thing that I think you can search. It's called The Hero's Journey. I don't know who's familiar with that. But the hero's journey essentially just says that we're all living. It's just the path that everyone goes on, or almost everyone who's gone on some sort of like exciting thing goes on. And it's that you sit there wondering, what is it? You're living in this mundane world, or the everyday world that you're living in, and there's this calling. I explained it as like a feeling in your gut that you need to do something, and the moment you decide to do it, there's this huge path where even, like you say, the universe decides to conspire to help you, because you usually find some elderly, a mentor, someone who's going to help you on that path, and then you go on this crazy, amazing journey. But the most important part was that point where you decided, I'm just going to do it, because you go on this crazy journey of like fighting dragons, or like going this crazy experience. But when you return from it, you return to the real world and something's different. You've now got this resolve to say, I decided to do something and I did it, and this is the accolade I get for doing it. And then you sort of reach this new level of saying, I'm going to try it again. And I'll try find the author of that thing for you, but there's a 4-minute YouTube clip, that you can watch on the hero's journey, and it helps articulate that feeling or that ultimate decision that says, you know what, I have to do this. And then I don't know if the other one was. Oh, Daniel asked about promoting small business. I have one point. I personally, as much as I know that the biggest challenge is funding, I personally don't believe that government entities should be investing expecting returns on investment. For small businesses, the likelihood of failing is really high, but I can't imagine now, just having started again, having to pay back R1 million loan, for example. And if the government entity is getting, I don't think because their biggest challenge, they will not fund small businesses, or they won't allow them to, beat the market. If it is, you need to build a cheaper manufacturing system, something like that. The first thing you think about is, how am I going to pay it back? How am I going to pay it back? And I don't think that should be the challenge of a small business. I think that should be what private investors are thinking about, return on investment. But government entities, when they give grants, and they, like the IDC and all of that, I don't think they should be thinking about getting the return on investment, because no one's going to start then. It should only be at a bigger scale when you're trying to scale up, or everything that your venture capitalists and all of them are trying to get a return on the investment. But that's what I think. Smaller businesses should be thinking about, how do I grow? How do I get to that next step without having to think about how you're going to pay back a little loan that got you started. And then yeah, I think that's all. The last one was Claude's thing on rejection. I think we're still learning. I'm still learning how to do. But luckily, I have a co-founder who's always. We've got different ideas of what rejection was. So someone will say, "No, that was an outright rejection. They don't answer the call anymore." But then we know that it's a full-on rejection where, like, if he was the route of communication and he's no longer getting responses, and then I now enter from my angle and I get responses, then it was probably not a rejection, but it was maybe just you. And then, but we've got an interesting way of balancing out. But there's one thing that that I'll also share after. It's just about like it's like 6 rules of persuasion, and one of them is persistence. People will eventually say yes. Sometimes they'll say no if you persist, but sometimes they'll just give in and say yes. But it's better to have an outright no than a silence of not knowing of what would have happened if I kept trying. So if it is about people and rejections from people, then persist until you get a no. The chances of getting a no is slim, but if it is a no, then you know to move on. But with an actual business, I actually think it's up to you to look at, like, is this idea working? Am I passionate enough? Can I make it work? And if you keep trying and it's not working, then perhaps if you're able to transfer the learnings to something else, then do that. But you can't keep running running towards like a brick wall. That's very different from just knocking on a door that you saw open 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll try to make it as short as possible. My name is Zolani Metu. I'm studying towards a Master of Social Sciences at the University of Cape Town, specializing in mental health. So I have a question for Lethabo. You were speaking about how once you go into market and actually testing your idea, working with sort of people that are your constituency, basically, can actually be more helpful than just sitting around and worrying about not getting funding. And I found that quite profound. So I want to know, since you also had to take a really huge decision of rejecting a job offer and going to do your master's, how did you juggle around sort of the urge to actually build what you've built so far and actually following your dream, and also having to sustain yourself in the journey? Because at the end, you know, you still have to make a living and all that. So it's not necessarily easy, I would imagine, to just start something new and when you start a business, it doesn't immediately go into profitability. So you have to start somewhere. How did you juggle around those difficulties?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Temi. I'm studying. Morning. I'm studying at Wits University, Masters in Physiotherapy, and I'm from Nigeria. My question is to Chinezi, and I just really want to ask, because one line here says you're involved in a network of innovative, high-quality and accessible private schools. So firstly, I'm going to ask, do you have any of these schools in Nigeria? And why I'm asking is, what role does the government have to play in providing accessible and high-quality education? I'm really saying this because when I looked at the fees for WITS, it's the total fees equivalent is like all of my education back in Nigeria, and even at then, it's still expensive for us to like get access to go to those kind of education. So how do you think the government enables or inhibits you in providing quality education to students from maybe most especially developing countries? How can they get access to good education at an accessible or inexpensive way?
Hello, I'm Willem. I'm doing joint honors in mathematical statistics and economics at Stellenbosch. So my question is, it seems to me that we're living in an incredibly momentous and important time in the history of like humanity. I may be wrong about that. It's maybe just millennial vanity. But like you read the incredibly scary things that John wrote us about the Paris Accord, and you hear things about artificial intelligence. And so you've given us a lot of career advice and entrepreneurial tips. But what would you have told a group of people who weren't us? I think like most people here would end up fine, if not all of us. But what if we were all incredibly normal, average young people? What advice would you give to them? Because those are the people I think we should care about.
Thanks. My name is Kumalo. I'm doing a joint honors in politics and philosophy at Rhodes University. My question is also for the first presenter in terms of education, high quality and affordable or access to education. And we were dealing in the last workshop with the concept of reconciliation. I'm just wondering if the model of education you're providing specifically within the South African context grapples with the questions of a post-conflictual, post-colonial era and how young people then are able to respond to those challenges and in a sense grapple with creating of South Africa a better world for tomorrow, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mpande. I'm a literature student at the University of Cape Town. My question will sound as if it's pointed towards Chinezi, but Lethabo, I'd also like, especially your comments on this. Setting up schools across the African continent, so the question of pedagogy, I would like to hear how you sort of navigate issues of method and practice of teaching and the curriculum as well. And then secondly, as a literature student, I would like to hear, because a running theme is you're quoting Paulo Coelho. John, yesterday you quoted Nietzsche, T.S. Eliot, J.K. Rowling. So I wanted to ask, what is the place of the arts in the world of business and in innovation and entrepreneurship?
Okay. I'm going to be very quick. Zolani, the first thing that, it's the challenge that any entrepreneur faces. There's a thing that says revenue is vanity, cash flow is sanity. Like, you really need to figure out a way to sustain yourself. And until we're living in like a great world where there's these thoughts and ideas from that research, I actually think most of it is stemming from India, to say there needs to be a stipend for people exploring entrepreneurship so that they can live and actually spend time figuring out the problem that they're trying to solve. And while that doesn't exist, then what we did is actually looking, what did I have at my immediate disposal that I actually could sell for revenue? And it wasn't anything, because we're still, trying to figure out how to develop a product. It still needed to be tested and all of that. And so I decided, for lack of a better term, to like sell my mind. Like, I knew I could program, I knew I could write, I knew I could. So eventually someone would come and say, hey, I've got this challenge, we need to, and this is the very first example, someone asked us that they needed to analyze interviews to figure out if all these spoken interviews aligned with the organizational values. That is, I'm an engineer, so I was like, I don't know, I'm not going to go through like 1,000 interviews. And so I thought to myself, and then they're like, we'll pay you for it. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. I had no idea how to approach the task, but put my hand up there and eventually figured out, wrote an algorithm, because engineering by background, I would have never said I'm a programmer. But the first challenge was I had a skill I could immediately sell, and that's what I did for cash flow. If it is fashion design, if it is cooking, if it is, do something, because even the whole point of entrepreneurship is how to decide, or what you do to generate income while you're still trying to generate income. And that eventually taught us to figure out, okay, these are the jobs that we will accept to take, because eventually we started working in the business and not working on it. And eventually we were like, okay, we're at a point where we don't have to take these tasks anymore. We can actually work on our business. But that's what I want to say. If you want to try something, what do you have at your immediate disposal that someone will pay for? And there is something. And then the advice I would give to ordinary people is that I don't believe that we were created to be working in a cubicle, like insane hours, going crazily, working towards someone else's dream. I do believe that there's something innate that we really want to do, and we should go out and do it. The challenge is that that's a problem. Ordinary people have been taught that they're ordinary because, you're going through the system and they couldn't figure out a way to cheat it. But that's not to say that they're ordinary. And so I think that sort of figuring out, or I would push the message of whatever the dream is that you have, to continue to keep it burning until you're in a position to jump out and go do it. I, for one, have decided if I ever get kids or anything, which is, it doesn't matter. But I would never put them through the ordinary schooling system. I would actually go out and learn. There's so much that I've learned. Like with programming and artificial intelligence and all of that, there's so much that I'm like, you know what, I'm actually going to be willing to invest so much into finding what this kid is really, really good at and spending all the resources into that, as opposed to putting them through an ordinary education system that will teach them that they're ordinary. Unless if a school that teaches innovation exists, then something like that. But the last thing is the role of business in the arts. I fundamentally believe that as long as we're human, there will always be a role of the arts. I'm always willing to pay someone to watch a great movie, or to pay someone to listen to them sing, or to pay someone for poetry. Like, that's, someone is really good at something, and you know they're really good if someone else is willing to pay for it. And the idea that it's all about science and technology and all of that, those are the business models, I don't believe that's true. I think that the arts, or people in the arts, are the original entrepreneurs, and that we shouldn't silence them out, because they're actually getting countries or people to pay for something that they're really good at. So I wouldn't cut it out or like move it out of the picture anytime soon.